This is Angie Homley-Zabo. I'm your friendly neighborhood art teacher, here today to teach you the next step in our metals journey. So your first step is designing. Then you create and glue template to your metal. Then you drill in the metal. And now we're at sawing. So we're step 4, we're sawing. If you haven't watched some of the previous videos that go over those first steps, please go back to my YouTube channel, check them out, get caught up, and make sure you've practiced sawing before you get to this step. You don't want to have your first sawing be on your actual pieces. There's some really important safety things that we have to remember when we saw. Does anyone remember what they are? That's right, you need your goggles. We don't want to get saw blades in our eyes, so anytime you're sawing, make sure you have your goggles on. Other than that, try to make sure your fingers are in spaces that they're not going to get cut, and just be aware of your surroundings. Focus on what you're doing. With that said, let's get started on cutting out our projects.
Welcome back, my friends. I'm going to show you how to take the sawing skills you've developed and start to saw out objects. Now, if you haven't watched my basic introduction to sawing video, I'll link it at the end of this video. Go back, watch that one first, because it takes you through all the basics. What we're going to do now is just talk about sawing this out. I want to review really quickly with you how to put in your saw blade. So I've got my jeweler's saw. I'm going to put my hand behind it, curl my little pinky finger here so I don't hurt myself. I've already attached my blade on this end. I've got this end fed into my saw frame. The blade is shorter. The blade comes to here. The end of this gap is here. That's what I want, because in order for my blade to be tight enough to be under tension, I have to flex the frame. So what I'm doing is I'm pushing my frame into the table. That flexes this space here. I tighten it while it's flexed, and it holds that blade in nice and tight. So I'm going to flex that blade. I'm pushing into the table, turning my wing nut, getting it nice and tight so it holds. All right, I've got my blade in nice and tight, and at this point I want to start cutting my metal out. What you're going to realize really quickly, the metal you're going to get comes in like a 6-inch wide sheet. This is 6 inches. I give my students 6 by 4 inches, which is about this big. I cannot cut with my frame all the way through that 6 inches straight through, because my saw frame's I think only 4 inches wide here. So I need to be smart about how I saw things out. And you can see how I started that on this piece. So what I want to do, and you can see these two have already been cut out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to remove sections of my metal, and that way they're a little bit easier to handle, and I can get my saw frame all the way around. So what I did here is I cut out on the line, because I don't want to waste my sawing time. I cut out on the line my earrings through here, down through here, and out. So now I have a manageable piece here. What I'm going to do next, and I've started working on, is sawing out these earrings on the line here, and then I'll have a manageable piece there. Every once in a while I have a student that's learning, and this is what this dotted line is about, and they're like, well, I don't want to mess up on my line, so I'm just going to cut out like a little halo all the way around and then pull it out, and then maybe I'll file down that line. Trust me, my friends, you do not want to file that much metal with the jeweler's files that we use in here, the needle files. Even a large file is going to take forever. You want to cut on that line and save yourself some time, okay? So I'm just going to put my metal over my bench hook. I want to have my cut line in where that V is. I'm going to rearrange myself here, move myself to the right so I'm lined up. I'm going to bring that saw in. I already have a line started, so what I'm doing is just getting my saw back to where I stopped. So kind of sawing motions. And again, this is a line that's already cut. It's wanting to stick there. There we go. Okay, so this is back to where I started. You'll notice right now I have an apron on. I have that on so if my metal falls, I can catch it here instead of trying to search for it on the floor. At home, I have a catch tray. At school, I do not, and I'm in my school studio right now. Straight up and down. I'm keeping my saw blade right on the line of my metal. I'm taking it nice and easy. Now Now right now my saw blade is hitting my metal. I'm not going to be able to finish this cut. So what I'm going to do, instead of trying to back my blade out, which will break it, is I'm going to loosen my wing nut. I'm going to pull my blade out, and then I'll come in, cut from this side. My next step in this process is I've got this nice big piece. It's easy to hold on to on my bench hook, and I need to cut these two out separate from each other, and I need to pierce this section in the middle. What I usually have my students do is to get their pieces to a size that's manageable on the bench hook. This is manageable, this is not, so manageable size. Once it's a manageable size, the next thing I want to do is pierce out these inside shapes before my pieces get too small. So I'm going to get manageable size, then do my piercings, and then I'll finish the exterior cuts. To do a pierced shape, you need to drill through your piercing, which I'm realizing right now I didn't do. I can see that there's the back of the divot here. So I'm going to drill that, and then I'm going to feed my saw blade through that hole and then saw. All right, so I've got my hole. I'm going to take my frame, my saw frame. I'm going to loosen up the side closest to me. I'm going to take my blade and feed it through this hole in the pierced shape. What's important is when you feed it whole, have that template face away from you. Okay, so the template faces away from me. I've got the back of my metal towards me. Feed that blade through the hole. I push it all the way to the end, let it hang out there. Feed my blade into this slot, wrap my fingers around the back of my frame, push to flex my blade, tighten my wing nut, and I've got this piece on here. At this point, what I'll do is I'm going to cut out to the line. I'm going to turn, so I'm going to do a left turn, so I'm going to use my turning technique, and then I'm going to cut all the way around. When I get to the end of my cut, I'm going to slow down so I don't pop through and cut myself. And I never throw away metal. So my scrap always goes into a scrap bin. You can melt it down and reuse it, or you can take it and sell it. Either way is better than throwing it away. If this piece falls through, that's why I have my smock here. It'll catch it in my lap and I don't have to go digging for it. So I've got my piece pierced out. And now I'm going to finish cutting around the outside edges. At this point, we're ready for the next step, which is getting the paper off of the metal. To get the paper off of the metal, you just need warm water. Cold water works too, warm is faster. So I have this dirty old mug. I'm just gonna pop these two pieces in that water. I'm gonna let them soak for a while. While that soaks, I'm gonna work on continuing to cut out the rest of my pieces. My pieces that I finished sawing first have been in the water for about 10 minutes, and if it's warm water, 10 minutes should be enough time. So I'm gonna go in here, fish them out. I typically do this at a sink, not my workbench. And if you look, the paper actually fell off. You can see there's a little bit of the residue from the glue. I just wanna take my fingers and make sure I get all of that glue residue off. I'd rinse it off in the sink. Make sure it's clean, because any of that glue residue will re-dry and then you have to sand it off, and that's a bit annoying. I would dry off my metal. Usually use a paper towel, not my smock. And then I'm ready for the next step, which is filing. And the next video that I'll post will be that filing video, so take a look for it on my channel.